All right. Hello, everybody. This is session 7 of the CPRP series, and we're covering the last half of the operations chapter. So after this, you'll have the test, which is session 8, and then you will be able to take that test as per the instructions that you'll find in session 8. Okay, so the section that we're on next is 4K in the book, and that is provide direct supervision of specific facilities and areas. And that includes opening, routine and closing, inspections, monitoring activities. In addition to planning, management, and maintenance of recreation facilities, one must be prepared to provide direct supervision for the daily operations within the facilities. Direct supervision can vary from opening, routine, and closing inspections to actively monitoring. Opening, routine, and closing inspections. Arguably, the most important daily procedures for a park and recreation facility operator are the opening, routine, and closing inspections. Ensuring patron safety is one of the primary reasons for conducting routine facility inspections. Typically, these inspections are guided by the use of a checklist for ensuring uniformity and thoroughness of opening and closing inspections, regardless of which employee is on duty. Developing these checklists is the responsibility of the first-line supervisor of a facility. There are two types of opening and closing inspections. There's a daily and a seasonal. One checklist is used on a daily basis for opening and closing a facility, while the other is used for opening and closing a facility on a seasonal basis. Daily inspections. Opening inspections are focused on making sure the facility is ready for its intended use. Although many opening procedures may be noted, a visual inspection of all areas to make certain they are safe for participation is one of the most important outcomes of an opening inspection. In addition, there are usually directions about opening various areas and/or rooms of the facility, setting various lighting and temperature controls, and setting up rooms with various combinations of furniture and other equipment to accommodate the first programs of the day. In addition, if irregularities are noted, the individual on duty would need to take the appropriate actions. For example, if a break-in had occurred overnight, the police would need to be called. If a water pipe was leaking, a work order would need to be submitted. Many other similar scenarios may be called for during the daily opening procedure. The first-line park and recreation manager is responsible for developing appropriate procedures for responding to various predictable occurrences and training staff in using these procedures. Daily closing inspections are mostly focused on facility security and a shutdown of building mechanical systems in order to conserve power. Again, checklist of important functions to complete should be developed. It is usually necessary to complete a thorough personal inspection of the facility to assure that A, patrons have vacated the area, B, all mechanical systems that need to be shut down are handled properly, and C, the area is secured. Facility opening and closing checklists should include inspection of the site or facility for potential hazards. For example, health code, OSHA or ADA violations, safety and or security concerns, etc. to staff and users. The specific items to be inspected will vary depending on the site or facility, and usually they will be listed on the checklist. In addition to verifying the safety or suitability of the items on the checklist, the professional must be familiar with the legal notion of premises defects and be alert to any condition that must be corrected prior to opening the site or facility to the public. Although your agency will likely provide you with guidelines and procedures regarding the actions to take when defective conditions are found, there is usually a need to exercise some judgment regarding the actions to take. Determining the severity of the hazard and its operational implications are the most difficult decisions. Thus, as a result of inspection, any one of the following may need to be implemented. And there's 3 of them. 1, complete a work order or implement other necessary procedures to have the hazard repaired. 2, open parts of the facility while implementing procedures to keep the public isolated from the hazard. Or 3, close the facility until repairs are made. Depending on the situation, this could be a major undertaking. Seasonal inspections. Seasonal opening and closing inspections are more focused on turning on and off appropriate mechanical systems and making certain during opening that the facility is in a presentable physical condition for the upcoming operational season. The specific items to be addressed depend on the type of facility. However, the Park and Recreation professional is responsible for developing comprehensive checklists that, 1, assure the proper closing of the facility so as vital systems are adequately preserved until the next operating season, and 2, assure that the facility is open and placed into a good operating condition for a new season. In addition to developing these checklists, the Park and Recreation professional is responsible for overseeing their implementation. Monitoring activities. During supervision of a facility or area, direct supervision of a facility or area involves observing the behavior occurring there and taking relevant actions needed to preserve the facility, to regulate behavior, and to respond to emergencies as required. Lifeguarding a swimming pool is an example of providing direct supervision of a specific facility. In this case, there are stringent procedures for providing supervision because of the high risk of water activities. In some facilities, an operations checklist is developed to provide systematic surveillance of an area. An example of typical items included in such a list are provided below. And here's an operations checklist. 1, periodically inspect restroom facilities, kitchen facilities, and other high-end use areas where cleanliness is essential. 2, take down and set up equipment needed for each activity so they may operate as scheduled. 3, complete emergency cleanups. And 4, systematically rove through the facility to create a supervisory presence. Make certain all areas are periodically inspected for the following: safety hazards, safety violations by patrons, unsafe use of equipment, rowdy behavior, or other unsuitable conduct. The goal of this activity is to protect programs and operations so participants can enjoy their leisure experience. In some cases, visual inspections are part of the operational procedures for a facility manager and occur prior to each activity performed at the facility. For example, at a water park, a water slide operator visually inspects the pool at the base of a slide to verify that the previous participant has exited the pool, thus assuring a hazard-free exit area. The operator then signals the next participant that they may begin their slide. The potential risk is so great that there may also be a slide operator at the top of the slide to ensure that no one begins before the all-clear signal is given. Developing appropriate inspection forms and procedures to reduce agency liability and ensure patron safety is an important duty of the professional. That concludes the section 4K on provide direct supervision of specific facilities and areas. Section 4Ls provide input for updating standard operating procedures and manuals. At its core, the primary purpose of developing policies and procedures for the maintenance and operations of a recreation facility is to enhance user safety. For specific programs, program areas, or facilities, operational manuals should be developed detailing specific policies, procedures, and rules pertaining to that area. Operational manuals are necessary when there is a greater responsibility for the supervision of more employees, including part-time and seasonal employees, when a more comprehensive detail of how things are to be done is needed, or when there are intricate processes that are required for operation of the program or area. A separate manual is needed because there are some unique aspects of operation in existence. The following is a list of general responsibility areas that may be included in an operations policy manual. And so it's security issues, staff issues, utilization issues, inspection issues, hazard issues, enforcement issues, and special equipment. So these are the list of general responsibility areas that may be included in an operations policy manual. So under security issues, this includes opening, closing procedures, operational policy issues involving staff and participant safety and security, protection of the facility and its contents, and emergency procedures, including evacuation plans. Staff issues. These include the number and qualifications of staff required for specific hours of operation and certifications that may be needed for specific duties. Utilization issues. Instruction should occur on the appropriate utilization of facilities and equipment. The misuse of facilities or equipment must be prohibited. Inspection issues. These include inspection details, schedules, and checklists, as well as a process to withdraw an item from use immediately if unsafe conditions exist. Hazard issues. These include the elimination of real or potential hazards such as exposed pipes, unprotected windows, or the persistent application of an inappropriate surfaces under playground equipment. Enforcement issues. This includes a process to enforce safety issues and prevent dangerous practices. Special equipment. These include operational and maintenance procedures for special equipment of facilities. Preparation of an operations policy manual requires an intimate understanding of the operations of the area, and additional input on its development may be gained from staff and the public. So, operating procedures manuals making revisions. Since operation manuals are developed for facilities and programs that are ever changing, they will require revisions. These revisions may be clarification of procedures or updating information on equipment or processes. Operations manuals should be reviewed regularly for any needed revisions. These revisions should involve staff who utilize the manual and work in the specific area affected. Operations manuals may follow a similar process as policy revisions in that a select few people gather input on revisions, draft a revised manual, get input on the revised draft, and then develop the final product that is approved and implemented. At times, we may be required to establish operational rules in absence of formal policies. In performing this task, we need to be aware of the distinctions between operational rules and formal policies. Rules and regulations are different than policies. They are more specific and direct employees and participants to act in a prescribed manner and do not require them to interpret the given facts of a unique set of circumstances. And remember, that's rules and regulations. An example of policies would be anti-discrimination policies that have been established by the agency's top administration. In contracts, a rule within an agency might be no employee shall leave their cell phone on during staff meetings. Rules and regulations also differ from procedures, which are more often outlined in operation manuals. While rules and regulations are rigid and dictate what a person can and cannot do, procedures outline chronological sequences of required actions. They prescribe a process of accomplishing or completing a task. Employees often believe if something is written is a policy and mistakenly indicate to the public that specific rules, regulations, and procedure that they are applying company policy. So in other words, so if an employee thinks that a policy is a specific rule, regulation, or procedure, they should say that to the public, it looks like, other than saying it's company policy. Policy, rules, regulations, and procedures are hierarchically arranged, but not all policies further define rules. Below is an example how policies, rules, and procedures differ. So I'm going to read you this. A policy. Model aircraft boats shall be allowed only upon the issuance of a permit by the Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation. The rules. The Department of Parks and Recreation prohibits the following. No flying shall be behind the zero line. No acrobatics or high-speed passes are to be performed over the runway. No flying outside of the flight boundaries specified on attachment to this permit application. And then an example of a procedure then is any individual applying for a permit to operate model aircraft boats shall file an application provided by staff of the Metropolitan Boards of Park and Recreation, pay an established permit fee, furnish proof of public liability insurance in the amounts to be established by the Department of Law, Division of Insurance, and also affix a Metropolitan Park permit number on each model of aircraft or boat. So that completes 4L. Provide input for updating standard operating procedures and manuals. 4M is provide reasonable accessibility accommodations. It is every Parks and Recreation professional's responsibility to prevent discrimination from occurring by becoming educated, acting responsibly, and sharing their knowledge with others to ensure accessibility requirements are met. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, was written to guarantee equal opportunities for individuals with disabilities in employment, state and local government services, transportation, public accommodations, and telecommunications. Public services provisions are addressed in Title II of the ADA. Public services provisions are addressed in Title II of the ADA. Just want to repeat that. The Access Board is the federal agency responsible for developing accessibility guidelines relating to recreational facilities and outdoor areas such as court and rink sport facilities, golf courses, and trails. State or local governments that construct new buildings or make alterations to existing buildings must make them accessible. Title II requires a public entity to ensure that individuals with disabilities are not excluded from services, programs, and activities because the existing buildings are inaccessible. This does not imply that all existing facilities are accessible. That completes 4M, provide reasonable accessibility accommodations. 4N is analyze operating data such as attendance, revenue, expenditures, maintenance, and marketing. In addition to collecting operating data, we must analyze the data for management and planning purposes. Operational data can range from attendance figures to maintenance records. An overview of the primary operational data areas are provided in the following sections. Attendance. Park, program, or facility attendance data can provide a great deal of insight into the Park and Recreation Agency's operations. Analyzing attendance data can provide the Park and Recreation professional with accurate information that can guide resource such as financial, physical, or human allocation decisions, and ultimately increase operational efficiency. Attendance data can be attained in a variety of ways. A few of the most popular data collection and analysis methods for agencies are described below. Okay, so the first one is observations. One of the most basic and easiest attendance collection methods, observations, requires us to count the number of participants, users in attendance. A variety of methods can be utilized to obtain observation data, including head counts, scheduled counts, and area programming specific counts. The next one is computer-based tracking software. Recreation software programs can be used to track attendance. Many of these programs can provide sophisticated reports in a timely manner for quick analysis. Registrations. Data can be obtained from program facility registration forms, questionnaires, visitor logbooks, etc. Reviews of program or facility registrations can provide us with attendance data within a specific area. And then finally, the next one is on-site counts. On-site counts. Similar to computer tracking software, on-site counts include mechanical systems such as sensors, collectors, turnstiles that are used to track attendance. And the last one is projected counts. This method is typically used when actual attendance data is not feasible. The technique requires us to review and anticipate attendance figures based on existing data. And so an example would be previous program registration figures, number of cars in the parking lot, traces left on site from users, and staff interviews, etc. Attendance data can be analyzed at the individual program park facility level or at the agency level. Data can be compared to previous data for the emergence of patterns or trends. And so this would be like by the year, program, park, facility, etc. Future projections of program, park, facility attendance can also be made by the data. When using the attendance data to make future projections, a common practice is to combine the information with other operating data, such as financial, maintenance, or marketing. Financial revenues and expenditures. The major responsibility for agency finances rests with the chief executive officer and the individual employees or department responsible for budget and finance. However, specific financial policies and procedures must be established for all employees whose work involves receiving or expending money. Types of financial data include appropriations, expenditure, revenues and balances, timesheets and payrolls, and purchase orders, contracts, and concessions. The specific financial data required would typically be established by the CEO and the policy-making authority of the Park and Recreation Agency, and then created by the accounting staff. Although the types of financial reports used to capture the data will vary greatly by agency, here are a few that are typical in many agencies. So there's revenue data and expenditure data, maintenance, and then marketing. So revenue data. Revenue received for a specific program, services, or facility or park area usage should be identified. Revenue receipts should identify the service, participant characteristics, and number. Money received from the sale of bonds, the sale of property purchased from the capital budget, and proceeds from the insurance adjustments are examples of non-revenue data, but which should also be examined to obtain a clearer picture of the agency's financial state. And then expenditure data. Expenditure data is used if accounts are managed on an accrual basis. This financial data includes total charges incurred, whether paid or encumbered, and current expenses. Some of the most common expenditures are described below. And there's encumbrances, contractual services, capital outlay, and debt service. Encumbrances. Purchase orders, contracts, and salary commitments are examples of encumbrances that are commonly included within an agency's expenditure report. Contractual services. Generally speaking, these are services rendered by individuals or organizations other than the Parks and Recreation Agency. The expenditures and income for each contractual relationship are typically itemized in financial reports. Capital outlay. Expenditures for land or existing structures, improvements on grounds, construction of recreation facilities, addition to or remodeling of facilities, or initial equipment purchases may be contained in a capital financial report. Debt service. Expenditures for the retirement of debt and interest payments for facilities or recreational areas may be detailed in a financial report. The debt service report is extremely important for both public and private agencies. Maintenance. Maintenance data should be analyzed by the Park and Recreation professional to determine maintenance needs, equipment replacement, repairs, and the cost efficiency of these activities. The Park and Recreation professionals should review maintenance records and analyze the data on a regular basis, such as monthly, quarterly, biannually, and annually, to determine plans for operational improvement in this area. And then marketing. Marketing data can provide the Park and Recreation professional with insight into the effectiveness of various marketing strategies. Marketing data can help answer that simple but critically important question, is it working? The it is your agency's marketing strategies, and the marketing data can help answer this question. In analyzing the agency's marketing data, we should consider the following. Marketing goals, identify performance indicators, ensure accurate collection of performance indicator data, and review and make recommendations based on the data. So I'll go through each one. Marketing goals. The agency and professionals should review the marketing goals that were established, while the actual marketing goals should have been developed well before the data analysis phase. It is important for the agency, professional, and staff to review these goals to make sure everyone is on the same page with these goals. Identify performance indicators. To analyze the data, we must determine the specific indicators important to the agency. For example, a performance indicator for the social media marketing efforts might be the number of hits or visitors on the particular social media website. Ensure accurate collection of performance indicator data. Once the key performance indicators have been identified, we need to carefully monitor the collection of this key performance indicator data. And then finally, review and make recommendations based on the data. The key performance indicator data should be analyzed so that the Park and Recreation professional can identify opportunities for improvement and the best path for achieving these improvements. That concludes the section 4N on Analyze Operating Data. 4O, Develop Standard Operating Procedures Manuals. Operating procedures and corresponding manuals guide the work of the Park and Recreation Agency and its employees. The primary intent of the procedures and manual are to ensure user safety within the park or facility. To achieve this goal, operational manuals are often developed for specific programs, program areas, or facilities. These manuals outline specific policies, procedures, and rules pertaining to that area. While operating procedures and manuals can vary from agency to agency, most manuals include the following information. So there's 7 of them. Security issues, staff issues, utilization issues, inspection issues, hazard issues, enforcement issues, and special equipment. That concludes 4O, develop standard operating procedures and manuals. 4P, compile information to defend agency in the event of accidents. Unfortunately, accidents can be a common occurrence for recreation agencies as they regularly manage parks, programs, and facilities that involve large crowds and high levels of activity. Ranging from traffic accidents to personal injury, the park and recreation professional must be adequately trained in the traffic accidents to personal injury. Let me start over. Ranging from traffic accidents to personal injury, the park and recreation professional must be adequately trained in the management of these incidents. A key component of accident management for us involves compiling information to defend the agency in anticipation of possible legal action. In compiling this information, we should complete the following tasks. We should interview witnesses. The park and recreation professional should seek input from witnesses of the accident. In collecting this information, many agencies have standardized forms that are used. It is important that the park and recreation professional focuses on the interviews on facts and not opinions related to the cause of the accident. The next thing that we should do is record evidence and information. Information related to the accident should be recorded as soon as possible to avoid forgetting or inaccurately recalling key aspects of the accident. Relevant evidence and information to collect include the location of the accidents, names and contact information for each of the witnesses, and a description of the accident. This information should be standardized and forwarded to the park and recreation professional supervisor. And then lastly, preserve, when feasible, physical evidence. Relevant physical evidence should also be protected. If the preservation of relevant physical evidence is not possible, then attempt to collect visual evidence, such as photos or videos of the accident location. That concludes 4P, compile information to defend agency in the event of accidents. 4Q, enforce code of conduct for facility users and program participants, coaches, and staff. Without the core element of safety, true recreation experiences are not possible. Thus, the park and recreation professional must ensure the safety of the facility users, program participants, coaches, and staff. The development and implementation of a code of conduct is a recognized method for promoting the safety of facility and park users, program participants, and coaches and staff. Once established, it is the responsibility of us to enforce these policies and code of conduct expectations. So on the screen, you'll see a code of conduct example. And I'll scroll slowly through this as I read this next paragraph. Code of conduct, facility users, and program participants. The first step in enforcing code of conduct rules to facility users and program participants is the communication of expectations. In particular, code of conduct expectations must be communicated as early as possible to facilitate users and program participants. These expectations are typically covered during the facility user's first visit or when particular participants register for a program. Signage is also utilized in facility and park areas to communicate key code of conduct policies. In addition to communicating the code of conduct expectations, the park and recreation professional must make facility users and the program participants aware of the consequences for code of conduct violations. This should also be done as soon as possible and is typically communicated in unison with a review of the code of conduct expectations. The enforcement plan should also be posted or made available to facility users and program participants. While each agency varies in its specific approach to code of conduct violations, typical enforcement plan is provided here that I just showed you. And then finally in this section, code of conduct, coaches and staff. We need to always communicate the agency's code of conduct during the initial stages of employment. Employee orientation sessions are a typical time for reviewing the agency's code of conduct expectations. The agency's code of conduct should be recorded in a formal document, like a personnel manual, and made available to all employees. Each agency will differ in the specific content, and then some of most common code of conduct expectations encompass safety, security, dress codes, communication expectations, attendance, sportsmanship expectations, promotion of agency values, punctuality, transportation, and equipment use. Some of the equipment use is like computers, phones, office supplies, etc. Some of the communication expectations include internal and external relations. It is the responsibility of the Park and Recreation professional to clearly communicate these rules and consequences for not adhering to these rules to all of their staff. That concludes 4Q, Enforce Code of Conduct for Facility Users and Program Participants, Coaches, and Staff. 4R, Develop Emergency Management Plan. Having an emergency action plan allows the Park and Recreation professional to take a proactive approach to managing and protecting the lives of participants, visitors, and staff. In preparing for emergencies and the unexpected, we should adhere to the following guidelines. Number 1, identify potential threats. Communicate with community officials and law enforcement to identify potential threats within the community. Based on the information obtained, we can develop appropriate security improvements to protect facilities, visitors, and staff. Number 2, create an agency operations plan. The plan should start with a statement that discusses the agency's goals and objectives as they relate to emergency response strategies. The plan should include contact information and guidelines for responding to various emergencies, such as weather-related threats, threats from plants, animals, and societal threats. Information for communicating with the media during these emergencies should be also included in the plan. Number 3, develop evacuation plans for building and facilities. Evacuation routes and meeting locations should be established for each building and recreation facilities. Evacuation drills should be regularly conducted. Number 4, establish mail handling precautions and protocols to identify suspicious letters or packages. And that concludes the section for our Develop Emergency Management Plan. Okay, the next section is 4S, respond to emergencies, incidents, first aid, CPR, etc. Emergencies, by their very nature, are virtually impossible to predict and can vary from a playground accident to an equipment explosion or malfunction. We should require first aid, CPR, and AED training for all staff, and require medical information checks for participants enrolled in all high-risk activities, sports, adventure trips, and programs where emergencies can occur. First aid kits should be located at every area and facility, and an emergency procedure instruction sheet should be included in each first aid kit. Portable first aid kits should also be available if programs go off-site such as for day camp programs, visiting local parks, or taking field trips. Also, arrangements should be made for emergency phone use at all activity areas and special events. A variety of reports for responding to emergencies may also be required. In all cases, we should complete the reports thoroughly, accurately, and on time. The following are some of the reports that are typically used to manage and document the emergency response process. Accident reports. In most agencies, accident reports accident reports are to be filed on all accidents and are to be completed immediately after an accident occurs. This is usually the first responsibility after the accident victim has been properly cared for and the area where the accident occurred returned to a safe condition or otherwise secured. Accident reports should identify where accidents occur, the severity of the accident, time of day, and whether or not the activity was supervised or unsupervised. The accident report should allow staff the opportunity to analyze frequencies and possible reasons for the accident and to make necessary adjustments in programs, equipment, or supervision. However, the written accident report should not record opinions or comments about the cause of the accident or how an accident might be prevented in the future. This could provide potentially damaging information in the event of a liability suit against the agency or individual staff member. Obtaining the complete names, addresses, and phone numbers of individuals who witnessed the accident is usually required. It is normal practice to forward accident reports immediately to supervisory and administrative staff in the agency. Incident reports are often required for all incidents, other than accidents with injuries that occur at a given venue. These can include customer complaints, records of behavior problems, or other incidents that need to be documented. That concludes 4S, respond to emergency incidents, first aid, CPR, etc. 4T, develop risk management, safety, security plans, policies, and procedures. Even the most well-developed safety and security plans are destined for failure if they are poorly implemented. In fact, failure to implement and enforce the rules could be interpreted as a breach of duty on the part of the agency and its employees. And this would be non-feasance and misfeasance. Therefore, careful attention should be devoted to implementing a facility's safety and security procedures. To implement a facility's safety and security measures, we need to conduct routine inspections. When developing routine inspections, we should, number one, determine what is to be inspected and how often it should be inspected. Number two, be consistent with the inspections, facility areas, floors, ceilings, restrooms, etc., and equipment changed frequently and require regularly scheduled inspections. 3, develop an inspection system such as checklists that can be easily used throughout all facilities within the agency. For example, a security camera checklist can be made flexible enough to be used in all facilities with security camera systems. 4, implement a system that monitors and reports maintenance problems. The system should provide quick and easy access to vital information regarding breakdown, when, where, why, and how. And then, when, where, why, and how often. The system should also be developed in a manner that allows minimal downtime and maximum follow-up. Carefully documented inspection schedules are evidence of reasonable care. Duplicate copies of these inspections should be kept on file by us. Preventative building safety and security procedures. In addition to the development of inspection checklists, employ other preventative safety and security measures. A list of additional preventative measures is provided below. Lock and key security. The agency should develop a key issuance and return policy for all staff. Keys should be issued with caution to ensure that only those who require the keys receive them. The use of exterior gates or security doors can also increase building safety and security. The next one is fencing. Fencing can provide increased safety for park visitors, hide visual eyesores, direct traffic, and prevent accidents. Fire protection. Public buildings must adhere to state and local fire codes. Next one, safety items. Location of safety items such as fire extinguishers, AEDs, first aid kits, weather radios, carbon monoxide alarms, etc. Signs and symbols. Signs can inform visitors of any safety or security issue within the building or facility. Closely monitor signage for needed maintenance, repair, or replacement. Illumination. Lights can reduce criminal acts by providing necessary safety for individuals visiting a building or recreational facilities. Emergency plans. Some of the most common emergencies and appropriate action plans for us are provided here. And so it's weather-related threats. So provide warning devices such as signaling flags, sirens, flashing lights in areas with a history of extreme weather. Develop a relationship with local media outlets to broadcast information and warnings. On-site signage should also be developed to warn visitors of potential for dangerous weather and conditions and describe what visitors should do during severe weather events. Threats from plants and animals. Staff should communicate the possible plant and animal dangers involved with various recreation sites. Staff should provide guidelines for safety in these areas, such as food storage while camping to safeguard against unwanted visitors. Additional information on insect and poisonous plants should also be communicated to visitors. And then societal threats. Police security presence can significantly reduce crime. The use of electronic surveillance can also reduce crime while providing a means for identifying criminal acts. Effective lighting can also reduce the occurrence of nighttime crime. We should also prepare emergency procedures for possible terrorist act. Events with large crowds, celebrities, politicians, etc. should be coordinated with local, state, and or federal law enforcement officials. The use of security gates and spectator visitor search procedures should also be employed. That concludes 4T, develop risk management, safety, security plans, policies, and procedures. The next section is 4U, implement risk management, safety, security plan, such as address safety concerns, recognize risk, identify hazards, and pre and post operating inspections. So these are the following considerations that should be addressed when implementing a risk management program. Ensure safe sites and facilities. In planning, design, construction, and operation of sites and physical facilities, parks and recreation professionals should ensure conformance to national, state, and local standards, including size, layout, health, fire, emergency, and building codes. As part of the daily operations, staff must also identify and eliminate all potential site and building hazards. The next one is ensure safe program development and delivery. It is our duty and obligation to provide the opportunity for a quality recreation experience. Professionals must ensure that activities are taught by qualified personnel who adhere to acceptable standards of program delivery and performance. If staff or volunteers are not completely competent, staff training and development activities must be provided, especially in service delivery and risk management. If employees, including volunteers, claim to be qualified, they should be prepared to provide a standard of care in communicating Stand by. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause for a second. If employees, including volunteers, claim to be qualified, they should be prepared to provide a standard of care in keeping with that of a reasonable and prudent professional. If the leisure professional is aware of incompetent employees or volunteers and chooses to do nothing about it, the professional can be implicated if legal action is taken by a complainant. Conduct safety inspection and investigations. It is the professional's responsibility to develop a systematic method for safety inspection and investigation within his or her assigned area of responsibility. The professional should determine what is to be inspected and how frequently inspections should occur, remembering that conditions change quickly in recreation areas and facilities. To facilitate regular inspections, develop checklists or inspection sheets and establish a method of reporting faulty equipment and maintenance problems that allows for timely follow-up and minimum downtime. These forms establish a record of safety in cases issues should arise. Identify hazardous materials and operation protocol. By the nature of their work, park and recreation professionals rely on a variety of chemicals and hazardous substances to successfully perform their jobs. As a result of this exposure to hazardous materials, develop and adhere to specific policies and procedures for safe storage, handling, and application of these materials. Traditionally, agencies have had a policy of operating in a manner that is environmentally friendly and protective of the health and safety of the public. Implementing these public policy goals today requires that agencies develop effective hazardous materials handling procedures. The primary source of information for handling and dealing with hazardous materials can be found in the safety data sheets. That's SDS for short. The SDFs are an information source that manufacturers of hazardous chemicals are required to provide for each chemical they produce. The SDS will specify the storage requirements for the chemical and the first aid procedures in the event of exposure to the chemical, as well as how to safely flush the chemical off of one's skins or from one's eyes. It will also include procedures for dealing with spills of the chemical and how to extinguish the chemical if it catches fire. Although we are exposed to a variety of hazardous materials, some of the more common issues to be dealt with in developing hazardous materials handling procedures are provided below. And there's a few of them. So the first one is type of materials. There is a wide range of hazardous chemicals that are routinely used in park and recreation areas. These can include chlorine for swimming pools, cleaning supplies, lawn care chemicals, including herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and fertilizers. Law will regulate the sale, storage, and application of some of these chemicals, and the agency's handling procedures will need to comply with the legal requirements specified. Storage. Storage requirements will vary depending on the chemical. In almost all cases, the agency will need a secure storage area that will only allow access to personnel trained and authorized to use the chemicals. Some chemicals will have the specific storage requirements and may include regulating heat, humidity, or moisture. Inventory. Some chemicals will require that detailed records be kept about the use of the chemical because of the shelf life of the product and the need to dispose of outdated products. For some regulated chemicals, the agency will need to account for all of the product purchased by the agency. Some park agencies provide a report to their governing bodies and public about the amount of herbicides and pesticides used each year in an effort to account for and report on their efforts at keeping the community environmentally safe through the use of fewer chemicals. The next one is application. Many hazardous materials must be applied in a specific manner and under specific conditions. In many cases, the agency will need to have their employees trained and in some cases certified to use and apply some hazardous chemicals. We will need to schedule this training and make certain that individuals who are currently certified are available to apply the chemicals. The next one is public notice of application. Many agencies require that areas to be sprayed must be posted in advance to notify the public about the type of chemical that will be used, when the spraying will occur, the type of pest or disease that is being treated, and a telephone number for further information. Some jurisdictions maintain a record of chemically sensitive citizens who are individually notified of spraying activities in their area. How long in advance is given varies from agency to agency. Special clothing. Special protective clothing is needed for applying some chemicals. Special clothing may also need to be available in case of an accidental spill of hazardous materials. Emergency procedures. The agency needs to be prepared to deal with emergencies created by accidental spills of hazardous materials or biohazards, such as bodily fluids. It should be clear to employees whether or not they are to deal with emergency spills or to call a hazardous materials emergency response team from the agency or community. And the last one is future directions. Because of short and long-term danger of hazardous materials, many agencies are developing environmental management systems to identify the environmental issues which impact decisions in using chemicals in the workplace. Integrated pest management programs that use minimal chemical intervention for environmental control are being implemented in many communities. In these instances, park and recreation professionals must devise and implement alternative methods, including biological, cultural, and mechanical methods for controlling pests. Because of these strategies, the look of urban park landscape of the future may include dandelions and other plants that today we consider weeds. Also under this section is ensure proper releases, waivers, and agreements to participants. And so participant releases, waivers, and agreements are statements of fact describing the roles and responsibilities of the agency and participants. Accordingly, all forms should be drafted and or approved by a lawyer to reflect the specific circumstances of a particular group. Releases and waivers will include the following components. And there are 6 of them. First one is recognition of the nature of the activity, potential risk in the activity, and or participation with others. 2, reference specific rules, regulations, and acknowledge by the agreement that the participant will obey by these rules and regulation. 3, acknowledge that the participant has a sufficient level of physical fitness to participate in the activity. 4, use of clear and understandable language so that the person signing it understands what they are signing. 5, a place to be signed by a person who is of majority age, usually 18 plus, but varies by state. And the last one, number 6, a waiver signed by a minor is not enforceable. An agreement to participate is a document often used with minors. It describes the activity and the dangers associated with it. It also includes rules of conduct and a statement instructing parents to discuss these rules with their children, so both the children and parents understand the dangers associated with the activity. With all of these documents, admissibility in court varies from state to state. However, experts agree that a well-written waiver does provide some protection from lawsuits. That concludes for you. Implement risk management safety security plan. Okay, 4V, develop a plan to accommodate participants with disabilities. The American with Disabilities Act requires that physical alterations to public accommodations undertaken after January 26, 1992 be readily accessible and usable by people with disabilities to the maximum extent feasible. Any facilities built or modified after 1992 must be readily accessible by people with disabilities. The standards and guidelines for new construction and existing modifications are defined in the American with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines. The acronym is ADA-AG. All architectural and communication barriers must be removed. If they're removable, it is readily achievable without much difficulty or expense. Park and recreation agencies that own, lease out, or operate places of public accommodations in existing buildings are responsible for complying with the barrier removal requirements. Additionally, communication barriers need to be removed so that people with disabilities can not only gain access to public areas, but also benefit from the goods and services provided there. For example, the use of Braille inscriptions throughout the facility or area can provide communications assistance to those with visual impairments. Details on removing architectural barriers are described in the ADA regulations available from the Department of Justice. The order of priorities for barrier removal that the Department of Justice recommends includes the following 4 items. This is in priority. 1, provide access from parking areas, sidewalks, and entrances to the public accommodation so a person with a disability can get through the door. Number 2, provide access to those where programs and services are offered. Number 3, provide access to restrooms, drinking fountains, and telephones when facilities are open to the public. And number 4, take other measures to provide access to facilities and programs that will assure every individual the opportunity to benefit from the services. That concludes 4V, develop a plan to accommodate participants with disabilities. 4W, provide customer service both internal and external. The Parks and Recreation field is a highly service-driven industry. Therefore, the Park and Recreation professional must regularly provide customer service both internal and external. Internal customer service. At the core of internal customer service are communication and access to information. Establish an environment in which both elements are present. In particular, the following functions should be established by us. Provision, synthesis, and organization of information. At a minimum, provide staff with the appropriate information to successfully perform their jobs. This information should address, to perform their job task, the relationship between their job and the others in the agency, an overview of the agency's policies and procedures, and performance feedback. Conveys value to staff. Values embraced by the agency should be communicated to staff. Information pertaining to the mission of the agency, its goals and objectives are aspects of the agency that should be conveyed to the Park and Recreation professional staff as well. Coordination of organizational systems. implement strategies and systems to facilitate good communication across the agency in both an effective and efficient manner. And then lastly, crisis communication. And these are the following functions for internal customer service. Crisis situations can occur at any time in the field of Parks and Recreation. Determine and develop a staff communication plan for the various emergency-related situations within facilities, parks, and programming areas. Now, under external customer service, to deliver quality external customer service, the agency and professional must first define quality and determine an appropriate level for their agency. Although definitions of quality will vary from agency to agency, quality must be relevant to the customers and agency. In developing a definition of quality, understand what influences a customer's perception of quality. There are primary elements influencing a customer's quality perception. Number one, the expectations of the customer. These expectations are typically based on several factors, including the image, reputation of the agency, prior experiences with the agency, marketing promotional materials related to the agency, and word-of-mouth feedback from others who have used the agency's services and facilities. Number two, the relationship with the customer's expectations and their actual experiences with the agency. Number three, the post-experience reflection by the customer. Once a definition of service quality has been established, develop a plan to meet the quality expectations of the customer, staff, and agency. The plan should help the agency move from an abstract concept of service quality to the determination of service expectations across programs, parks, and facilities. Customer service training programs can be implemented to orient staff on these expectations while providing strategies for meeting or exceeding these expectations. To be successful, these programs should include, there's 5 of them. Number one, an environment that promotes organizational commitment and support among employees. Employees who are not committed to the agency and its services are likely to be in the training program, leading to minimal training transfer. Number two, a clear definition of the customer base. The customer base's facility, service, and program expectations should be reviewed. Number three, an evaluation of current service quality levels within all of the agency's programs, facilities, and service areas. Number four, the development of a service improvement plan. Typical elements within a service improvement plan are objectives, performance standards, human relations programs, management participation, support processes, complaint reporting procedures, and employee and customer service quality education. And the last one is 5, ongoing monitoring and assessment of service levels among customers and staff. And that concludes 4W, provide customer service both internal and external. Okay, 4X, manage customer relationships such as service recovery, recognition, and retention. Being in a service field, agencies must successfully manage relationships with their customers. In managing customer relationships, be familiar with the role of service recovery as well as recognition and retention activities. A brief description of these activities is provided. Service recovery is defined as the ability to put things right for the customer in a meaningful way when they go wrong. It represents an important element of customer satisfaction with the agency's services. In particular, poorly resolved complaints will likely lead to greater ill feelings by the customer toward the park and recreation agency and lower levels of customer satisfaction. In turn, lower levels of customer satisfaction have been shown to have a negative effect on customer retention. Empowering agency's frontline staff is one method to improve the agency's ability to recover. In empowering frontline staff, have them share the information about the agency's performance and overall culture with the frontline staff. Agency performance information might include program participation numbers, program facility revenue, program facility expenditures, etc. Then do for them develop a reward system to recognize frontline staff who contribute to the agency's overall performance. And then when appropriate, give frontline staff the power or authority to make decisions that influence agency performance. Recognition and retention activities. As noted above, customer perceptions of service quality are becoming increasingly important to agencies. Several factors have been identified to influence customers' perceptions of service quality, including time spent waiting, treatment by staff, and the physical appearance of the park or facility. Focus on customer relation efforts, managing these factors to improve service delivery and improve long-term retention of these customers. Research has repeatedly shown that fewer resources, time, expenses, and energy are required to retain existing customers than to recruit new customers. Retained customers are typically more loyal and provide additional benefits to the agency, including positive word-of-mouth publicity and stronger recommendations. And they are less likely to be persuaded by offers from competitor agencies. Thus, customer retention goals should be a strategic priority for the Park and Recreation Agency. A recognized customer retention management strategy is the implementation of a two-way communication plan. At a minimum, the two-way communication plan should include these two things. 1, provide an opportunity for the customer to provide feedback, positive or negative, to the agency. This feedback can be obtained from both informal, such as conversations with the customer, and formal, such as customer feedback forms methods. The key is to ensure that the customer is aware of these opportunities and feels comfortable in providing feedback. Number 2, the agency should have a formalized response plan to the feedback. Too often, complaints or feedback is received from a customer, but no follow-up or formal response is provided to the customer making the complaint. Efforts should be made to ensure that customers are aware of the process for receiving and investigating their feedback. In addition to managing the factors that influence customer service quality perceptions and implementing a retention management program, customer recognition activities are another important element in the customer relation dynamic. Customer recreation activities allow the agency to formally recognize their loyal customers and can help in maintaining long-term relationships with these customers. Examples of customer recognition activities include a free day pass to the facility, free or reduced registration in a program, thank you notes and cards, customer appreciation days or giveaways such as shirts, mugs, pedometers, food, books, etc. Customer of the Month programs, loyalty programs, customer referral incentives, free or reduced upgrade, like facility membership, repeat program participant, etc. A charitable gift in the customer's name. Random acts of kindness, such as randomly select a customer to recognize discount bill on a random day. Some more are recognition and celebration of an achievement, such as birthday, retirement, hosted facility events after hours, hosted parties, and gift cards. That concludes section 4X, manage customer relationships. 4Y, manage properties, such as parks, facilities, and areas. The parks and facilities and areas managed by us are diverse. For instance, The park and recreation professional may be tasked with managing an undeveloped park that includes acres of forested hills, no utility access such as water or electricity, waterways, diverse terrain, limited visitor interaction, and a remote location. This same professional might also be responsible for managing a second park that includes multiple ball fields, paved trails, outdoor fitness equipment, playgrounds, a water park, and a community center. While each of these leisure spaces will require individualized management activities, some common management principles can be universally applied to most areas. These principles include safety and security needs, property and user needs, development and operational resource needs, and legal requirements. An overview of each of these principles is provided right now. Safety and security. The safety and security of a recreation property is one of the most important management functions performed by us. When managing recreation properties, consider three elements of safety for the property visitor user: the setting, the activity, and other visitors. Assessing the safety of the setting, for example, the property itself, is performed by examining the interaction between the visitor and the property. Items to assess might include fence height, water sources, unsupervised equipment, etc. A review of the specific activities performed on the property and their corresponding safety concerns should also be completed. As an example, consider the local high school athletic teams who utilize the community center's fitness center for weight training during a time of peak community usage, such as 3 to 5 p.m., or 3:30 to 5 p.m., I mean. The park and recreation professional would need to consider the safety implications associated with this activity. Finally, consider the safety concerns related to visitor interactions. Returning to the previous example, one might need to consider the safety implications of large numbers of competitive high school athletes using the fitness center space alongside large numbers of users from the community during this peak usage time. Property security must also be managed by us, and although specific security measures will vary by agency, here are some primary security measures. Facility security equipment. This includes sprinklers, fire security doors, fire security alarms, video surveillance, visitor database management systems, signage, and lighting. And then fencing, and then signage, posted policies, lighting, lock and key security, video surveillance, scheduled patrols, like from law enforcement, and development of emergency safety and security response plans. Property and user needs. Regular needs assessments can be performed to obtain insight into the needs and interests of the users. It is also important to be cognizant of the property's needs. For instance, outdoor areas will likely have environmental or ecological elements that will need to be considered. Carrying capacities, for example, the level and type of use at which selected social, physical, and biological components begin to decline at unacceptable rates, will also need to be considered for each recreation property. Development and operational resource needs. Managing recreation properties requires us to consider both the development resource needs and the needs to operate and maintain the property. Too often, an agency will focus financial resource discussions on the development costs and fail to fully consider the resource costs associated with operating and maintaining the developed property. Careful planning and ongoing record keeping is needed to accurately monitor the resources required for all phases of the property's life cycle. And then legal requirements. The park and recreation professional should be aware of any legal requirements associated with the recreation property site. Common legal requirements for recreation parks, facilities, and areas include building codes, accessibility, environmental standards, and occupation-related requirements. A description of each of these legal areas is provided next. Building codes. Typically enacted by local government, building codes require the Park and Recreation Agency to subscribe to a required building format, layout, or visitor traffic expectation. Common building code requirements include electrical, plumbing, safety, security, entry, exit, locations, natural disaster, maximum capacity, occupancy, playground safety, aquatic health safety, etc. Accessibility. The American with Disabilities Act, ADA, requires properties to meet various accessibility standards. Environmental standards. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, requires properties to meet various environmentally acceptable standards. And then finally, occupation-related requirements. The primary mandates for occupational-related requirements are found in the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 1970. This is known as OSHA. OSHA mandates outline specific criteria and standards for protecting employees from work-related injuries or illness. And that concludes 4Y, management of properties. 4Z, monitor capital improvements, renovations, buildings, and new facilities. So capital expenditures are made to finance projects that are costly, such as land acquisitions, park and building construction renovation, and other such projects that could realistically utilize the operating revenue during a given year. Often, equipment purchases that are expensive, non-expendable, and serviceable for many years are included in the capital budget. Typically, there are policies governing capital equipment and projects indicating that any projects over a designated dollar amount are to be considered capital equipment or a capital project. Reviewing and understanding the agency's schedule of outstanding bonded debt is a crucial step in assisting with the capital improvement programs. A schedule of outstanding bonded debt typically includes a description of all debt issued by the agency, the purposes for which the debt was issued, the issue and maturity dates, the amounts outstanding at the end of the current fiscal year. And by the way, this will be the same amount that will be outstanding at the beginning of the first day of the upcoming fiscal year, and the amounts of principal and interest payments that must be made during the upcoming fiscal year. An example, here's an example on the screen of a schedule of outstanding bonded debt for you to look at. So as you can see here, there's the issuance of the debt type, there's the purpose, here's the amount that was issued, here is the issue date, here's the maturity date, and the amount outstanding. And what this doesn't include is the interest paid and things like that, but this is a schedule of outstanding bonded debt. So this is what it looks like. Scroll through this. So as it says here, developing an understanding of the amount of principal and interest that will be required for subsequent fiscal years until the bonds are retired is another issue for the park and recreation professional to consider. An example of the schedule of payments due during the upcoming fiscal year is provided here. So this is what it will look like. Okay. A capital outlay schedule provides the agency with a list of each park area facility and a major piece of equipment. The capital outlay schedule for each property owned by the Park or Recreation Agency should be considered as part of a long-term, at least 5 years, financial plan to forecast spending. A multi-year budget plan provides a picture of what the agency's financial status is likely to be, with a preview of where possible shortfalls or surpluses may occur. Plans can be changed well enough in advance to avoid crisis. Planning will be especially important for capital improvements such as facilities, major maintenance of facilities, such as pools, community centers, things like that, vehicles and other equipment, and for developing parks and natural areas. Planning ahead allows your agency to define future needs, provide long-term financing for those projects, and coordinate community growth. And here on the screen, I'll show you an example of a schedule of capital outlays. So here's an example of scheduled outlays. So it'd be like a turf lawnmower, estimated cost, less trade-in, and whatnot. But what it doesn't do is tell you what year, so you don't know when the peaks and valleys are. So, okay, that concludes 4Z, monitor capital improvements. 4AA is the next section. That's provide input regarding capital improvements based on operational needs. So, in addition to monitoring the agency's capital improvements, we will often be looked to for recommendations based on the operational needs of our departments. In making recommendations, we should rely on agencies' planning documents. In particular, capital improvement decisions are typically drawn from an agency's comprehensive master or strategic planning documents. Although the comprehensive master and strategic planning concepts share similar characteristics, each also embraces some distinct qualities. Here's a quick overview below. Comprehensive plan. Get to the test here. We're going to be going over the test here soon. Comprehensive plan. Utilized to identify short and long-term priorities for us and our agency. A comprehensive plan includes the agency's goals and policies, development standards for parks, facility assessment data, agency inventory, socio-demographic data for the community, and the identification of park or other facility deficiencies. Despite its various interpretations, comprehensive plans typically serve as the overall plan for the entire agency and its operations. Master plan. Although it can vary by agency, master plans are generally subjects of the agency's comprehensive plan and thus tend to focus on an agency's specific physical resources such as land, facilities, resource areas, etc. Land use, park, and or greenway development and recreation facility development are examples of master plans for an agency. These plans are typically updated every 10 years and are driven by data obtained by the agency's constituencies and available resources. Strategic plan. These plans center on the development or revision of an agency's mission and vision. Data for the plan is often obtained from a variety of sources that provide insight to the trends and issues within the agency's internal and external environments. Guided by the agency's mission and vision, a list of strategic priorities, goals, and objectives is typically developed within this plan. An action plan for achieving the goals and objectives is also included in the strategic plan. That includes 4AA, provide input regarding capital improvements based on operational needs. 4BB, analyze trends and best practices. Before we can successfully analyze trends, we must understand the difference between trends and fads. Trends are prevailing tendencies or inclinations that are gradually gaining or losing momentum. Trends are also defined as the current style or practice. Trends are born, grow, mature, and reach old age and eventually die. In contrast, fads are short bursts or losses of interest or ways of being. The Snuggies blanket was a fad. Fads are rapidly changing, dynamic, and highly sensitive to external forces. We must be able to distinguish between trends and fads or other short-term interests in order to successfully plan and respond to trends. Trends have long-term implications, and the professional must observe and study these trends carefully to develop proactive and methodical strategies for managing these trends. While not exhaustive, the list below describes a few of the prominent trends that will have short and long-term implications for us. An aging population. According to the U.S. Census, the United States will experience significant growth in its older population between today and 2050. In fact, the population of those aged 65 plus is expected to almost double between 2012 and 2015. And it goes from 41 million to 83 million. The growing size and needs of this population will have a significant impact on parks and recreation profession. The next one is childhood obesity. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's research has found that childhood obesity has more than doubled in children and quadrupled in adolescents since 1980. Data indicates 7% of U.S. children 6 to 11 years of age were obese in 1980 compared to 18% in 2012. Obesity rates of adolescents 12 to 19 years of age increased from 5% to 21% in the same period. Furthermore, data indicates that more than 1/3 of children, adolescents were overweight or obese in 2012. Work time dynamic. Some research has found that nearly 66% of workers in the United States are spending more time at work compared to previous years. In addition, U.S. workers are taking less time off, such as vacation time, and research has indicated that many workers anticipate delaying retirement due to financial reasons. Best practices. By definition, best practices are those practices or strategies that have produced superior results. Best practices typically employ a methodical process that has been determined to be good or exemplary. In turn, these best practices are often adapted to fit another agency. Benchmarking is a term used to describe the process of park and recreation professional employees to identify and implement a best practice. Engaging in benchmarking to analyze and identify appropriate best practices takes time and skill. In completing this task, we should have sufficient knowledge of our own agency's current practices, develop a process to compare another agency's current practices with ours, know where to locate best practices and determine if a particular practice is suitable for their agency, be able to modify the identified best practice for their agency, ensure what resource support is in place for the implementation and ongoing management associated with the best practice. That includes 4BB, analyze trends and best practices. 4CC is identify needs for new facilities, services, and capital improvements. Community parks and recreation agencies are responsible for providing their communities with quality recreation opportunities. Agencies must ensure that their residents have the opportunity to participate in quality recreation programs and services, effective and safe recreation facilities, and attractive parks. In turn, these services can promote a stronger sense of community identity, improve the quality of life for residents, and create a positive economic impact within the community. To deliver these services, agencies must be concerned with the recreational needs of the community and effective planning of present and future capital development improvements in accordance with these needs. A community-wide needs assessment survey is used to identify the recreation needs of and interest within a community. The community-wide needs assessment survey provides administrators with information about residents' attitudes, opinions, and perceptions towards current and future park recreation services that can be used in the planning of new facilities, services, and capital improvement areas. That concludes 4CC, identify needs for new facilities, services, and capital improvements. 4DD, develop and recommend agency-specific policies, regulations, code, laws, and rules. The park and recreation professional will be involved in policy making and the enforcement of regulations, codes, and laws. For public and nonprofit park and recreation agencies, there is a board that is charged with setting policy. Few boards take it upon themselves to actually set policy. In reality, the staff develops the policy, then seeks board approval. The trend in policy development is to write policies that maximize the discretion at the level in the organization's hierarchy where employees are able to recognize, interpret, and apply different facts to policy decisions. This is part of what is meant by empowering employees. All employees need to understand the organization's policies, rules, and procedures in order to interpret them to the public. To respond, I don't know why it is our policy is not acceptable. All policies should have mission or goal achievement purposes. If they do not, one could legitimately wonder why they exist. Below is a list of here is a list of steps typically followed to develop policy. There are 7 of them. Needs assessment. Determine if there is a need for policy, if there are recurrent decisions that need direction, and if the issues impact operations of the agency in a significant way. If so, there's likely a need for policy development. Number 2, write policy and develop rationale. The next step is to draft a policy and test its feasibility. Several iterations of development should be used until a suitable policy recommendation is developed. It is also feasible to research policies used in other agencies for similar circumstances. Number 3, examine the impact of the policy as written and revise as warranted. Number 4, examine the feasibility of implementing the policy, including possible costs, and the acceptability of the policy by staff who will need to enforce it and revise it as warranted. And then 5 is examine the acceptability of the policy by citizens who will be affected by the policy and revise as warranted. 6 is research the impact of the new policy on current policies to make certain it adds to, but does not conflict with existing policies. The resulting final set of policies should be comprehensive and coherent and should resolve the issues identified previously. Number 7, recommend the policy to the board of the or the entity empowered to set policy. When presenting a policy, the park and recreation professional should review the need for the policy, summarize the different policy options available, indicate to the board the policy recommended by the staff, and finally provide a rationale for the policy alternatives selected. Okay, interpreting policies, regulation, codes, laws, and rules for the public. Policies, procedures, regulations, and applicable codes, laws, and rules are most likely in a written format, such as a policy manual that can be quite large. It is rarely feasible to give a policy manual to all constituents of the agency. However, it is important that the policies and procedures and all applicable regulations, codes, laws, etc. are known to the public. Agencies can accomplish this in several ways, including place a copy of the manual online, post important policies, regulation, code, laws, and rules in the facilities, place selected policies, regulation, code, laws, and rules in seasonal program brochures, have copies available to any customer requesting the manual, train employees in the rationale of the policies, regulation, code, laws, and rules so that they are better able to communicate them to the public. Okay, and then participating in the evaluation and revision of policy, regulation, code, laws, rules, evaluation. This is evaluation and revision. It is virtually impossible for any park and recreation agency to operate and be effective without the existence of written policies. However, the use of a written policy manual does not guarantee the understanding of specific policies and rules. We cannot always assume that a breach of policy means that the policy is bad and should be amended, or that the employee has committed a grievance act and must be reprimanded. There must be openness and two-way communication, ensuring complete understanding of the agency's policies prior to the policy evaluation. As policy or rules become stagnant and outdated, corrective action should be initiated, and the policy or rule should be changed or abolished. Although the policy authority at the top of the organizational structure is ultimately responsible for establishing policy, we at all levels in the organization should recognize a responsibility for policy evaluation and for recommending change when appropriate. Policy evaluation requires the efforts of us to determine to what extent agency policies have achieved their desired ends. For this measurement to occur, the intent or objective of the policy must be clearly identified. Criteria must be developed that describes the intended and real results or outcomes of specific policy formulation. Finally, action must be undertaken to amend or eliminate policies that have a negative impact on agency operations. And then the last section in here under this 4CC is revision. When revisions are needed, they should follow established process in the agency. Revisions are often needed for clarification purposes. The goal of a policy development is to provide the park and recreation professional with information to guide decisions about future actions to make certain the agency's mission and vision are achieved. Since it is not possible to anticipate all possible circumstances that we may face, any policy must allow for discretion because each decision is likely to be made upon each different facts. Good policy, then, should be specific enough to ensure consistency and fairness of decisions and adherence to the organization's mission, vision, and goals, while also allowing sufficient discretion to be applied to different facts of each situation. When this is not the case, revisions are warranted. Policy revision follows many of the same steps as policy formulation. The policy revision will start with a committee which reviews and discusses the issues with the policy and why the revision is necessary. They will then get input from those necessary, including staff and the public. This is not to say that the public shouldn't be involved with all policy making decisions and revisions, but while the public has a right to give input, having a voice in all aspects of the agency makes for an inefficient organization. Once appropriate, input is gathered, a policy revision is drafted, it is then reviewed by staff and in some cases the public. With this new feedback, a final policy revision is passed on to the board for adoption and implementation. That concludes 4DD, develop and recommend agency-specific policies, regulations, code, laws, rules, etc. The last section is 4EE, and it's right there on your screen. And so many state and federal governmental regulations impact the Park and Recreation Agency's operation. Therefore, the park and recreation professional must be able to successfully locate, review, and implement the applicable regulations by recognizing the potential impact they might have on the agency. A recommended approach to ensuring compliance with state and federal regulations is the use of accurate record keeping by the agency. For example, record keeping can be used to identify and track employees who require specialized training in such things as pesticide application, water treatment plant operations, or the use of protective equipment. Special compliance files for each applicable act or regulation can be established within the agency to monitor the agency's compliance. Employees must also be kept informed of significant safety and health information that might affect them. Employees have the obligation to work safely, wear protective equipment when required, and report the accidents if they do occur. The employer must maintain a safe working environment, provide proper tools, and maintain a record of occupational injuries and illnesses, and report these occurrences through proper channels. The auditing function is perhaps one of the most effective cost control programs of the agency. Auditing ensures compliance with the established policies and authorizations of the agency. And that concludes section 4EE, ensure agency compliance with national, state, and local laws and regulations. And that concludes the operations chapter. Now we're going to take the test. So I'm going to read the item. A Community Parks and Recreation Master Plan is a document that provides which of the following? Is it a personnel schedule, an inclusive framework for early planning, evaluation information on programs and services, or information about maintenance operations? Give you a second to answer that for yourself. And the answer is B, as in boy, an inclusive framework for early planning. Which of the following is the best reason for conducting routine facility inspections? To decrease vandalism, guarantee patron safety, prevent theft, or reduce liability risk? That's B, as in boy, guarantee patron safety. Number 3, according to the American with Disabilities Act, any facility built or modified after what year must be readily accessible for people with disabilities? Is it 1985, 1992, 1999, or 2007? The answer is B as in boy, 1992. Which of the following, number 4, which of the following should not be included on an accident report? A, the location of the accident. B, the contact information of individuals who witnessed the accident. C, detailed witness testimonies on who was at fault. And D, personnel, excuse me, personal addresses of individuals involved in the accident. So which of the following should not be included? And the answer is C as in cat. Detailed witnesses' testimonies on who was at fault. Number 5, the park and recreation professional has developed a policy manual for a recreational facility and wishes to make the manual available to the general public and users of the facility. The most appropriate method to accomplish this task would be to A, place a copy of the manual online. B, distribute copies of the manual to all facility users upon their arrival to the facility. C, Mail copies of the manual to each household in the community. D, host an informational booth at the upcoming job fair in the community. Okay, the answer is A as in apple. Place a copy of the manual online. 6. The primary benefit of developing policies and procedures for the maintenance of a recreation facility is to A, reduce agency liability, B, maintain consistent facility management, C, enhance user safety, and D, control facility expenses. And the answer is C as in cat, enhance user safety. Number 7, a park and recreation agency identifies the level of maintenance that is acceptable through which of the following? A, the size of the maintenance budget, B, the frequency of maintenance inspections, C, the qualifications of the maintenance employees hired, or D, the establishment of maintenance standards. Okay, the answer is D as in David, the establishment of maintenance standards. Number 8, upon arrival to open a facility, the recreation professional finds that the door is open. Which of the following actions should be taken first? A, lock the door. B, call local law enforcement. C, search the building. D, wait for other staff members to arrive. And the answer to that is B as in boy, call local law enforcement. Number 9, blank are made to finance projects that are costly, such as land acquisition, park development, and facility construction or renovation. A, operational expenditures, B, revenue, surplus, and recovery projections, C, capital expenditures, or D, facility park surplus funds. The answer is C as in cat, capital expenditures. Okay, the last question is D, number 10. Sorry, that's not the answer. Number 10, a major disadvantage of program location registration systems is A, limited opportunities for registration staff to interact with program participants, B, a reduction of actual programming time due to long registration lines, C, increased likelihood of cash handling problems, and D, disruptions with other programs in the facility or park. And the answer is C as in cat, increased likelihood of cash handling problems. That concludes the test, the practice test for chapter, for this last operations chapter, and session 7. Thank you very much, and good luck with the test in session 8.